There's a moment most people recognize, a moment that happens faster than we expect. Someone says something that irritates us. A situation suddenly becomes frustrating. An emotion rises quickly inside the body. And before we even realize what is happening, we react. A word we didn't mean to say, a decision made too quickly, a response driven more by emotion than by wisdom. And a few moments later, the mind catches up. We think back to what just happened, and quietly we ask ourselves, why did I react like that? Most people have experienced this many times. Moments where they knew the better response, but still chose the wrong one. Moments where patience would have helped. Moments where silence would have been wiser. Moments where calm would have changed everything. Yet in the heat of emotion, something inside us moves faster than our ability to think clearly. This is where the struggle with self-control begins. Many people believe that self-control is simply a matter of discipline. They imagine it as something strong people naturally possess, a quality that some people have and others simply lack. But the reality is more complex, because self-control is not only about willpower, it is deeply connected to the way the human brain processes emotion. Inside the mind, there are different systems constantly interacting. One part of the brain reacts quickly. It is responsible for emotional responses, protection, urgency, survival. This part of the brain moves extremely fast. Another part of the brain is slower. This is the part responsible for reflection, judgment, wisdom. It is the part that considers consequences. The challenge is that when emotions rise quickly, the faster system often takes control. And when that happens, the slower, wiser part of the mind does not always have time to respond. That is why even intelligent people make impulsive decisions. That is why even kind people sometimes speak harshly. That is why even people with strong faith sometimes react in ways they later regret. Because self-control is not simply about knowing what is right. It is about creating space between emotion and reaction. And that space is often very small, but that small space can change everything. One of the reasons self-control feels so difficult is that emotions are powerful signals. They are not random. They are designed to capture attention. Anger tells us something feels unfair. Fear warns us about possible danger. Frustration appears when expectations collide with reality. These emotional signals move through the body quickly. Your heart rate changes, your breathing shifts, muscles tighten, the mind becomes alert. In those moments, the brain believes something important is happening. And when the brain believes something important is happening, it pushes us to act quickly. That is why reactions often feel automatic. But reacting quickly is not always the same as responding wisely. And this is where maturity begins. Maturity is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to remain present while emotion is happening. Instead of being carried away by the first impulse, something inside pauses. It notices the emotion. It observes the reaction forming, and it chooses carefully what comes next. This kind of pause is small, sometimes only a few seconds, but those seconds create space. Space where wisdom can enter, space where the mind can remember what truly matters, space where faith can influence our response, because faith does not eliminate emotion. Faith transforms how we move through emotion. In many spiritual traditions, self-control has always been considered a sign of inner maturity. Not because controlled people are emotionally cold, but because they have learned to guide their reactions rather than be controlled by them. In the Christian tradition, self-control is described as one of the fruits of spiritual growth, not as a rule imposed from the outside, but as something that grows from the inside. The Apostle Paul described this transformation when he spoke about the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and self-control. Notice something important about this list. Self-control appears alongside peace and patience. This suggests that true self-control is not about force. It is about alignment. Alignment between our emotions, our values, and the deeper wisdom we choose to live by. When those elements begin to work together, self-control becomes less about fighting ourselves and more about understanding ourselves. Self-control is often misunderstood. Some people imagine it as a rigid form of discipline, a kind of emotional suppression. But true self-control is something far more balanced. It does not eliminate emotion. It guides emotion. Imagine a river flowing through a valley. Without boundaries, the water spreads everywhere. But when the river has direction, the water becomes powerful and purposeful. Emotions are similar. Without awareness, they move in many directions. But when guided with wisdom, they become a source of strength. This is where faith can quietly transform the inner life. Faith reminds us that we are not required to react to every emotion immediately. It teaches patience, reflection, trust. Instead of responding to every moment with urgency, faith invites the heart to slow down, to observe, to breathe, to remember that not every situation demands an instant response. Sometimes the strongest action is restraint. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence. Sometimes wisdom appears in the pause before speaking. Self-control does not make life smaller. In many ways, it makes life deeper. It allows our actions to reflect our values. It allows our words to carry intention. It allows our relationships to be guided by care rather than impulse, and over time, something beautiful begins to happen. Moments that once triggered immediate reactions begin to feel different. The pause becomes easier. The mind becomes calmer. The heart becomes steadier. Not perfect, but steadier. This is the quiet strength of self-control, not loud, not dramatic, but deeply transformative. And if you have ever struggled with impulsive reactions, if you have ever wished you could respond more wisely in difficult moments, remember this: self-control is not something you either have or do not have. It is something that grows, slowly, through awareness, through reflection, through faith guiding the inner life. And every moment of pause is a step toward that growth. If this reflection helped you see self-control in a new way, consider subscribing to the Inner Formation. This space exists for conversations about emotional clarity, spiritual maturity, and the quiet transformation that happens within. Because sometimes the most powerful changes in life begin in the small moments where we choose how to respond. If this reflection spoke to something inside you, remember this: you are not alone in what you carry. Many people walk through life quietly holding more than others can see. Pressure, responsibility, expectations. But faith was never meant to make life heavier. Faith was meant to remind you that you do not have to carry everything alone. So take a slow breath. Allow your mind to rest for a moment. And remember that peace does not begin when life becomes perfect. Peace begins when the heart learns to trust. If this message helped you today, subscribe to this channel for more reflections on emotional clarity through faith. And if you feel comfortable, share in the comments what this season of your life has been teaching you. Sometimes the most powerful step toward healing is simply knowing you are not walking alone.